Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are around the globe. Great to have you. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, which is on Moldova and its recent parliamentary election. It's great to have you. We will be waiting for another minute or two. So if you want to grab a drink or check your emails, right now is the time. We'll start very soon. We don't want to keep you waiting for too long. We'll wait just a moment for everyone to arrive. Thank you very much for joining us today. Great, there are more and more people joining. Great to have you, everyone. And welcome to the webinar on Moldova. For the next 60 minutes, we'll be talking about the parliamentary elections, the lessons learned. We have two great experts, which I will introduce in a minute. Very good. More and more people are joining. So let me once again say hello. My name is Josef Lentsch. I'm the CEO and founder of Partisan and the Political Tech Summit. It's great to have everyone on board here. Thanks for taking the time and stopping by. We are discussing today the Moldova and its parliamentary elections that happened last weekend. We have two great experts here with us, and I want to just quickly recap what has happened over the last days. Moldova had its parliamentary election, which was, I should say, quite anticipated in Europe, in Brussels, and around the world. Of course, Moldova is very much in the focus at the moment because of its geographic position, its political position. But what happened was that the PS, the party of President Maya Sandu, which she's aligned with, she and the pro-European party won. It won a decisive victory subject to final vote count. The PS secured a little bit more than 50% and gained an absolute majority of seats. So it got an outright majority in parliament, which was actually more than many had expected. The main opposition, the Patriotic Electoral Bloc, which is aligned or an alliance which is pro-Russian, received about 24% of the vote. The voter turnout was 52%, again, somewhat higher than in previous elections. And the campaign, of course, was marked by strong allegations of Russian interference, disinformation, cyber attacks, and efforts to sway the vote in favor of pro-Russian parties. There were election observers deployed by the OSCE. They were monitoring the election. However, with this majority, the PS is positioned to govern without needing a coalition, giving it a stronger leverage to pursue reforms, particularly those tied to European Union integration and judicial reforms. That's the thing we're looking at. And of course, as I said, Moldova was really in the spotlight also after Romania. You all know what happened there, and we had a webinar on this as well. So today we want to look at what happened actually behind the scenes, what happened backstage, what happened in the campaigns. And I have two great experts with me that will discuss. And of course, you as audience are very much welcome, as always, to post questions. You have a Q&A down in the footer. There's an open chat where you can post. So please feel free at any point, not just at the end, to jump in, post your comments, thoughts, and questions. With that, let me introduce to you the two experts of today's webinar. With me is Haritonova. She is a country representative of the National Democratic Institute, and she's actually based in Chisinau, where she is right at the moment in Moldova. She's also an expert in public opinion research. Hello and good evening, Taisia.
Hello, very nice being here today to discuss the results of Moldovan elections with you.
Thanks for being with us. And with us as well is Martin Angeby. He's a senior analyst at the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. He worked at NDI Moldova for 3 years, and he's also been a campaign manager in 3 elections in Sweden. And as he told me when we talked before, already in 2018, when he ran campaigns, he spent the whole campaign budget online. So he's very well suited to talk about digital campaigning. A warm welcome to you as well, Martin.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Great. Well, Taisia, as you are in Moldova, in Chisinau, can you perhaps introduce us to what happened over the weekend, what happened before, and what's a bit of the aftermath? So give us a bit of a big picture on the ground, and of course, particularly with a view on the digital things that happened at and during the election.
Absolutely, thank you. As you've already outlined, Joseph, these have been really anticipated elections in Moldova. Moldova is a parliamentary republic. The parliament is, of course, the main deciding body in the country, and hence this election is being perceived as really the most important for deciding the course and the future of Moldova over the next 4 years. Rightfully so, as you've mentioned. The international attention was very much focused on Moldova over the last weekend, waiting to see what the Moldovan people will decide about their future and their development course for the next period and beyond that, of course. We also, NDI did extensive opinion research in the period before the elections to see where Moldovans' expectations lie at and what they expect to see and what issues matter for them most ahead of these elections. And of course, we also engaged with civil society and with media to raise citizen awareness around the elections and also have campaigns increasing awareness and discouraging vote buying, as we've seen previous year, this being a major phenomenon registered by most international observation missions which came to Moldova. Clearly, the elections were high stakes, not in the spotlight, not just for internationals or not just for political actors, but also for the citizens. We've seen just in this summer when we did a nationwide survey, seeing that most Moldovans actually recognize that these elections are crucial for the future of Moldova. Some would even say that they are the most important elections in the recent history of the country. And of course, there were 3 top issues on Moldovans' minds ahead of elections: economy, fighting corruption, and maintaining peace, or the security issue of Moldova. And of course, we saw that they did impact the final result of the election. We must also mention, and this I would say is one of the key conclusions of the elections, that EU integration, Moldova's EU integration course was perhaps one of the most important factors now for Moldovans when they went to the polling stations last Sunday. We did see in our research that most Moldovans want the next parliament to focus on delivering Moldova's European integration. They do perceive that this election were basically about choosing Moldova's course towards west or towards east in the next years. And clearly, when we look at the results, we can definitely say that there is a confident mandate which Moldovans have given to the pro-European course of Moldova for the next years. Of course, last year, we saw the referendum passing with kind of on-the-line results, and this year we see a very confident reinforcement of Moldova's aspirations to continue its course towards becoming an EU member. Of course, there's an ambitious target set by the previous government, now the administration, which will more likely be in the office for the next years, to deliver Moldova's EU accession by 2028. And clearly the citizens have given this mandate to the ruling party to continue their work in this regard. If we must say about the results, of course, we see some surprising actors passing the threshold. Democracy at Home party, for instance, was not really reflected as potentially passing the threshold in all of the surveys actually which we saw. If we take into account, of course, the margin of error, they could potentially be kind of seen as one of other contenders beyond the 4 forces which were almost everyone predicted to enter the parliament. But still, it's surprising to see them pass the threshold. And of course, it opens much more space to discuss digital strategy, since it's very much a party which had a very active presence on online ahead of elections. And also the results clearly show that when it comes to the pro-European option for Moldovans, it very much aligns with the ruling party and the perception that they are the major pro-European force right now in the country, as the results show. Just to let space for more discussion and for questions and answers, I will maybe let Martin also share his reflection as well.
Thank you, Taia, and we'll get back to the digital strategies later in the discussion. Martin, as Taia mentioned, it was a bit of a surprise, the, let's say, positive outcome from a European Union perspective, and also the size of the victory. Can you give your perspective, also, from of course, a threat view, what did not come to pass, that, perhaps there were some concerns of vote buying, there were some concerns of disinformation, of deploying, AI and different ways to influence the election. Why did this not happen? What was done right this time?
I would say, and if you followed Moldova at least a little bit, you will know that a huge attempt was made with last year's presidential election and referendum, and that means that the adversaries, Russia and their affiliated oligarchs, showed a lot of their cards. I mean, they showed that they can build a vote buying operation, and they showed that they can do a lot of online campaigning. And I think being aware of this, it really helped the Moldovan authorities to crack down quite efficiently on some of the attempts, particularly the vote buying did not factor and has not factored. Although before the elections, weeks before the elections, months before the elections, there was a lot of discussion about this, and the security police arrested people, etc. So I think that this was kept under control. When we speak, I would say that this is a surprise victory. I didn't meet a single person in PAS before the election that had any hopes that they would win the popular vote, that they would have over 50%. And right now it's standing at 50.5, which is symbolically very important. And I think it's really important then to look at the narrative, at the concerns of the citizens and how they have been effectuated. In some of the surveys, we do not see, if you ask an open question, what do you think is most important in Moldova right now? People will mention inflation, high prices, economy, corruption, health is quite high on the agenda as well. And they don't. The war kind of comes in as number 20. But if you give them a list where war is present, then it actually comes in top 3. So there is a latent fear of war, and this is something that has been known to the anti-European side for a long time, and there has been this suggestion in the disinformation campaigns, or information depending on how you see it, that if Moldova is not friends with Russia, the consequence will be a Ukrainian scenario. And this is exactly also what the Georgian dream was pushing in Georgia. So people voted against war and against, in this case, Europe. I think what I thought was quite fascinating was a concerted effort to change that narrative in Moldova ahead of the election, pointing out from through different communicators that Russia, and this is an exaggeration, but this is a narrative that they were pushing, Russia wants Moldova so they can attack Odessa from the west. And this, to the general person, seemed much more of a plausible scenario than the European Union forcing Moldovans to fight against Russia. So I think that was really the change between the anticipated 42% and the final victory of 50%. The second surprise, I would say, is the collapse of the center. There was a diehard pro-Russian parties. And then there was an attempt to make a seemingly pro-European coalition with a presidential runner-up and the mayor of Chisinau, to be okay. We are for Europe, but in a different way. And these people actually was a big disappointment. They scored a very low. They just came over the threshold for blocks. And then the biggest surprise, I would say, is this party Democracia Casa. And they have a very strong social media presence. But also they are a unionist party. They are interested in unifying Moldova with Romania. And we have seen in a lot of surveys that around 30% of Moldovans actually think that this is a good idea. And we've said for a long time that, okay, there is this space of pro-Romanianism has not been exploited. So I think that also shows that if you can read the polls right, you can, and the opinion research right, you can actually choose issues that will resonate with people.
Thank you, Martin. As you mentioned, the concerted effort to establish or tackle that narrative that you mentioned in terms of Russia and the European Union. Can you give us some idea what does it mean also digitally? How was this concerted effort actually then executed?
When and the International IDEA has done great research on this, scraping the internet and looking at this, actually more of the spending on campaigns, but they noticed that around earlier in the campaign, a larger part, and later in the campaign, a smaller part is actually participation of what they call it. Suspicious looking non-contending accounts, suspects accounts. I mean, people without any accounts that you cannot determine what they are. I will give you an example. I was just looking this afternoon. There is something called an account called, or some outlet called Eternal Moldova. And for the last couple of years, they've been posting historical memories, historical documents, pictures of Stephen the Great, etc. And when elections come, they all of a sudden start posting political messages, and they put sponsorship behind them. We saw this a lot in the presidential campaign, and we saw it now as well. So this would be a typical tactic. And there has been lots of AI generated profiles. There have been bot farms in Africa doing likes and enhancing content, etc. There's reports of this. This is not our own reports, but I think it's quite clear. And the objective is, of course, to turn people's minds, but also, I mean, to have people starting to feel that you cannot trust anything. So I will just disengage from the political process.
Thanks, Martin. Taisia, Martin mentioned that, of course, there was this big intervention and effort to influence the presidential election. Now, of course, another election that took place ahead of the Moldovan election was the Romanian election. So what do you think was learned from looking at the lessons from the Romanian elections? Can you give us a few examples, perhaps?
Yes, I think the Romanian elections were actually eye-opening for many, not least to look at surprise candidates or people who were under the radar and then surface back. That is, of course, something that we didn't really, most people didn't really anticipate in Moldova. There were, of course, discussions, or there were questions about who might be a surprise in Moldovan elections, and indeed, Democracy or Democracy at Home, as Martin has mentioned, was the one actor which people kind of predicted or could at least look at as a potential surprise actor. So we were at some point prepared to see someone who might be flying under the radar but pop up last minute as a figure or as a kind of a social media phenomenon, basically. And we must say that indeed this is one of the things which we see translated to Moldovan experience, is the importance and the role actually which social media actually plays de facto in shaping people's perceptions and shaping the narrative ahead of the elections. We consistently see across the years in our polling that social media has already become the main information source for Moldovans. Most Moldovans actually would consume also their news or information about politics from social media. And indeed, I think the Romanian elections also is quite in line with seeing just how important social media is in shaping the debate ahead of the elections and in propagating or in propulsating candidates to the leading positions just due to their very active social media presence. Of course, we see this one party which came up, as Martin mentioned. They have been really, really active on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube as well. We've seen just this today during the day, the leader of a party just transparently showing that they have had more than 25 million engagements over the last 28 days, meaning precisely during the period of a campaign, just testifying how active they have been on social media. And actually, this is another lesson, is that actually I must say that most of the political candidates, political parties running in these elections actually made a very good use of social media and really oriented their campaigning to the online space. And I think this is where the eyes of not just Moldovans, but of everyone were to focus also the efforts on the traditional methods of campaigning, of course, doing outreach, doing face-to-face activities, but also to focusing their efforts on the online space. And indeed, we also saw the ruling party, PAS, basically running a very active campaign on social media. Again, as the actors in the campaign are now becoming more transparent, more open to share their experience. We saw a post just the other day of a Chisinau staff of PAS basically mentioning that they have really ramped up their online campaign with in the last month of basically during the campaign period, having as much as 8 or 9 posts a day, and in the 2 months before the election, totaling for up to 400 content pieces, which includes reels, posts, live videos, and so on, just showing how committed the political space was on being on social media and actually being active right there. But of course, the lessons were learned not just by political actors, the civil society, the international actors focused a lot on monitoring social media, on as Martin has just mentioned, even the example of International IDEA, looking and tracking the activity of political actors online, which rightly so should be done. We see that this space is more and more relevant ahead of the elections. And I must say also, and must note here, the role of media and investigative media precisely. We've seen a lot of efforts of the investigative media, both local and international. For instance, BBC have done investigations into the pre-electoral environment and to the campaigns run by political parties and not just by them, and the main trends in the information space, which have all, of course, been inspired by the risks and the challenges which we've mentioned, we've noticed in the Romanian elections last year.
Thank you. I wanna follow up on social media in a minute, but I want to just bring in the question posted by Joanna. Thanks for being the icebreaker and posting the first question. Did you see that 2 PAS MPs announced that they would continue as unaffiliated members? And if so, how do you interpret this decision? Taisia, Martin, are you aware of this, and do you have a few?
PAS and who?
2 PAS MPs announced that they would continue as unaffiliated members.
Yeah, this was a concern of mine ahead of the election, where it looked like PAS would have a very slim majority. They have a slim majority. They have 55 out of 101 seats. But when I was looking at the numbers, I mean, deducting them from the poll, they would have 53. And PAS decided before the election to have a broad list. So they included at least 2 sports people and some general culture people. And my experience from my own party at home is that you put such people on your list, and once they're in parliament, they feel that they are entitled to much more than just being a regular guy doing regular work, and they want the continued VIP treatment. So I think this is still a risk factor. During the last mandate period, I think PAS lost at least 3 MPs during the way. Some, they dabbled, they screwed up, or they got disappointed, etc. I mean, this is normal in a party, and when you have a slim majority, this is very difficult. But it was known that these people were famous people and not necessarily party people. Interestingly, as well, I mean, PAS before the election ate up the other pro-European opposition parties. They were quite small. And PAS started negotiating with them about getting seats on the PAS list instead, which led them to become enemies of each other. So they broke up the bloc, and then in the end, they took two people from Platforma Da, which is a party that's with a with a good history took 2 of their candidates on their list, and that party went out of the competition as well. So they really ensured that there was nobody on the pro-European flank. Again, reading the polls, I think that, for instance, 20% of Moldovans are very Western oriented and 20% are for NATO membership. And there is no party really running on this, which they could do, because most of them dream of becoming the catch-all party. But in the parliamentary system, you have the catch-all parties and then you have the niche parties. But some of the smaller parties don't accept the fact that they're going to be niche parties. I think that this is where Kostyuk and Demokratia Casa kind of made it, because nationalism is kind of a niche and you can build from it.
Thank you, Martin. Taisia.
Yes, actually, I saw the news today. It refers to the 2 actually members of a Platforma DA, which Martin just mentioned. They, of course, accepted to run on the PAS lists before registering for the elections. And the former head of the party and the former head of a women's wing of a party both ran on the PAS list and announced just this morning that they will continue to be as unaffiliated MPs. In a way, I think that's understandable, and they announced from the very beginning that the rationale for them to join the PAS list in the first place was to have a broad pro-European force running in the election, and as they at least mentioned, that their motivation was to ensure or to bring the citizen attention towards unifying everyone's forces behind a strong pro-European force, fearing, of course, the dispersion and then the possible dispersion of pro-European forces, which would impede creating a pro-European majority in the parliament. So in a way, they were not from the beginning members of a PAS party, and they never actually mentioned or they never said that they would give up or they would integrate or become members of a PAS party, and they didn't run as members of a PAS party, which is, of course, also quite expectable that they would announce their intention to be unaffiliated in the parliament. Of course, with the seats which they are likely to have in the parliament, PAS can still retain a confident majority. You would need 51 seats to form a government and to pass most legislation in the parliament. So they're quite confident in that regard. Martin, of course, has mentioned that this is not a very wide margin as they used to have. They did in the 2021 elections, but still it's enough to form a government. Not to say, of course, that legislation will not be passed, or these two elected members of parliament will not, vote on legislation or will not support the position, the pro-European course of a pro-European legislation or the reform agenda, which will be set. We are still yet, of course, to see that. But definitely, I think, and this has been one of the key recommendations made by political commentators, by civil society, that the PAS majority will, of course, need to also work more actively with parliamentary opposition, of course, where possible, where it aligns with the pro-European course of the country, but definitely they will need to take into account the opposition legislation proposals, to be more open to consultations and to cooperation, to build and to really work towards political reconciliation. This is actually a very important factor, because we've seen at least 2 major election monitoring, international monitoring observation missions saying that the elections have been carried out in a highly polarized context, and this will continue, of course, to be an issue for the next period. So definitely, this reconciliation, this cooperation will also need to take place in the parliament again, where the interests of a country will be at stake, and where the pro-European lines will follow between PAS and their potential allies in the parliament.
Thank you, Martin. In terms of also influence, have you observed the use of AI and its rollout in the field on either side, by either party?
Yeah, I've read about it, but I have not seen it myself. I saw early campaign. I saw some deepfakes featuring the president. But there is a lot of it. There is a high number of news pages that looks like news pages and they have some general news, and then they have quite a lot of news of Moldova. They are kind of copies of international outlets, and then they are posted in comments. One of the stories that was pushed there was that the president, since she's unmarried, that she has bought sperm in a sperm bank to have a child with Elton John. I mean, stories like that, and they are fabricated, and it's been reported by credible sources, and there has been a lot of it. But who knows? Maybe the population is also getting a bit used to it, and thinking because they've heard after two elections ago already, there was a story about a secret deal of accepting 400,000 Syrians into the country, and then that was why they publicized. They actually wasn't good for the pro-European side at that point, but after that election, it was publicized as a fake story, and there has been a lot of talk about it, etc. But I would say something really important, and this is a tech seminar, but it's very important to know about PAS, that they have an extremely strong ground operation. They have gone really at length to create a canvassing organization, knocking on doors, holding local meetings that would be the envy of many parties in Western Europe. And when we look at social media statistics like Facebook followers or TikTok average, etc., these small newcomers are very strong there. The traditional oppositions, the socialists and the kind of pro-European centrist oligarch parties, they are not as good at it at all. But PAS, what distinguishes PAS from the others, of course, the party, if you're in government, it's always easy to be on TV and there's still people watching it. But the ground operation really stands out.
Thanks. As you mentioned, social media, Taisia, what are the most important social media platforms for Moldovans, and how has that changed potentially over the last years?
We do see that the top of social media platforms most used by Moldovans has been quite unchanged. It's been Facebook, YouTube, but last years we see TikTok also growing and replacing Instagram in the top three. So currently, at least before the elections, we definitely see Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok dominating the consumption habits of Moldovans online, followed by Instagram and Telegram. We must say that when we look at the trends compared to 4 years ago, when we started first researching media consumption habits in Moldova, TikTok and YouTube has been on a continuous growth. So specifically TikTok in 2022, since 2022, when we started measuring this platform, we see the number of users, or regular user of TikTok, doubling in the last years. Clearly, this is one of the key findings which we have been observing, that video streaming platforms are really gaining in popularity. We advise our partners also to adapt to video formats of communication online as much as possible. This is the type of content Moldovans prefer. Of course, we should not neglect Telegram. When we look at Telegram in 2022, when it started stepping into media consumption habits, we saw that it was just 21% of Moldovans who followed it at least once a week. And now it's over 35% of Moldovans who use it on a regular basis to get their information. Telegram is precisely and first and foremost a platform where Moldovans use to get information about politics, but also, of course, to communicate. Now, beyond just using these platforms on a regular basis, because of course you can open Instagram and look just at pictures, but someone might also resort to following political content on this platform. We see that definitely Facebook is the most used platform for political news in Moldova. If you will, Facebook is kind of somewhat of an X compared, to, for instance, the Western countries. Facebook is really where most of the political debate is happening, both in the politicians communicating on Facebook and the state institution communicating on Facebook, but also people seeking this information and discussing political information on Facebook. Interestingly, TikTok, or half of users of TikTok, are also saying that they use it for getting news or for getting political information. And same goes for YouTube. Both of these platforms are also rapidly growing, and they're also shaping the consumption habits of political information specifically, so not just information in general. And Instagram, of course, quite intuitively, is not the go-to platform for Moldovans to follow politics. It's also not the immediate kind of scope of Instagram, so it's less important in this regard. Of course, we must say that social media is not as Moldovans don't necessarily go on social media to consume news about politics, as people are everywhere else in the world. They use it to connect with others, to consume, entertainment content first and foremost. But of course, before electoral campaigns, the environment and the offer of information shifts, and it's very much dominated by political content, but not just from political parties. And this is where I also need to give a big shout out to civil society and media organizations who have been incredibly active ahead of this campaign, and also ordinary citizens basically raising awareness about the elections, encouraging their peers to go out and vote, discouraging vote buying as a bad practice, a toxic practice ahead of the elections. And you mentioned before, we see a 52% turnout in these elections, which is higher than we saw in 2021, and I think the highest that we've seen for parliamentary elections in Moldova, just testifying to how productive these efforts of communicating online and having this whole of society approach towards mobilizing people to go out and vote and raising awareness about the elections definitely paid off in the end, with people showing out of the polling stations more than they have before, especially in the young demographic. Of course, young people are more prone to use social media as their go-to information source. And this year we saw just, I think it was around 49% of all the young people going out to vote this year, which is consistent with, I think we only saw a higher rate at the second round last year for presidential elections. So it's like very, very good turnout among young people, just again signifying to all the tremendous effort being done online by political forces and by the civil society, media, and citizens.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, that's quite remarkable, right? I mean, if you have an overall rate of 52% people going to vote, and then 49% of young people, I mean, I think that's really high compared to many other countries where the ratio, the relation is a bit different. I want to follow up on TikTok in a minute, but before that, Martin, Telegram is known or said to be also a very effective channel for Russian disinformation and being mobilized. Also, can you give us a little bit of an insight there, how lively this was during the election campaigns?
Yeah. For a long time, when we were discussing this with authorities and others, we were telling them, well, Telegram is a marginal phenomenon. I mean, it's you should focus your campaigns and your thinking on the bigger networks, but we see it growing. What we also saw is that the people who are on Telegram are very very strong in their political views. So the Telegram users were much more pro-Russians, etc. What I've seen in a lot of inauthentic content is that they try to pull people from Facebook, which has traditionally been moderated, into Instagram. So you have sensational news, and then when you click on the link, you come to a Telegram page. So I think it's a movement that is being encouraged. Once you are on Telegram, it's more like the Wild West. I want to give you just I want to give you some statistics. I didn't go on Telegram, but just for people to have an understanding of how the parties use the social media. When you look at Facebook followers, Democracia Casa, the nationalists, have 500,000 followers, and PAS has 100,000. So they have five times the number of followers. And then the socialists and others, they have half of what PAS has. So this shows that these small parties have a very strong presence. When it comes to YouTube, Renato Usati of the Partido Nuestro, who also came in with around just over 5%, he has 160,000 followers on YouTube, whereas PAS has 5,000 followers or subscribers, right? And Democracia Casa has 30,000. So again, those small parties have manifold, much more than the ruling party. And then the traditional opposition is after. When it comes to TikTok, Usati has an average of 900,000 views per posting, and more or less the same for Kostyuk, who's the leader of Democracia Casa, whereas PAS has Grosso, who's the party leader and the Speaker of the Parliament. He has 100,000, so 8 times less. So this just shows that, okay, it may explain the falling apart of the traditional opposition is actually they did not go on the social media and they are losing to these modern parties. So I think that even if they're small at the moment, they have a lot to gain. When it comes to Democracia Casa, and you asked about Romania, they are very much affiliated with the AUR party of Romania. They ran the AUR campaign in Moldova during the Romanian elections, and there's also possibly some sort of a payback now in this election.
Thank you, Martin, for the statistics. Very interesting. As you mentioned, TikTok, Taia, when we spoke beforehand, you said that one of the new parties that entered parliament, its leader is a very prominent voice on TikTok. Can you give us a little bit of a flavor of that? And as Martin said, are we entering also, for Moldova, the age of if you don't use it, you lose it? So you need social media to actually get into the parliament or be successful?
TikTok is indeed an interesting phenomenon. I think that for most of us, TikTok is still a black box. We're still trying to figure out how the algorithms work and how exactly or what type of campaign and what type of content basically becomes viral or is really becomes prominent on TikTok. I think that Martin has also mentioned the statistics for Vasile Kostyuk, which is the leader of his Democracia at Casa or Democracy at Home party, which is, as I mentioned, a surprise. We indeed didn't see any polls projecting his party to enter the parliament to pass a threshold. Of the polls which did actually show him at around 2% of public support. Of course, we were cautious before the elections that some polls projected as much as 30% of undecided voters, and we knew that the last minute factor still plays a very big role for voters in general, and we knew that this big size of undecided voters might take the vote in anywhere, and we might still see and we might still theorize that this very intensive presence of Democracia Casa on social media, and particularly of its leader Vasile Kostyuk, could have also been a factor in basically bringing a larger support to their party ahead of the elections. As I mentioned, I saw today the leader of his party going live or posting basically a video showing or explaining their social media strategy. I've mentioned that he said they had 25 million engagements over the last month. He said that his TikTok pages, which as he claims were purposefully taken down, had around 17 or 18 million followers and engagements or regular people who viewed his content on TikTok. In any case, even if we just take his words for what it is, it's impressive to see this statistic of engagement on social media, specifically on TikTok. I saw reports from some civic groups looking into his social media strategy, basically suspecting or alleging some foul play. Of course, I'm not the one to judge on that or to reflect more to this statement. But one thing is for sure, that he has been really active on social media. He was showing in NDI polls as a person who Moldovans follow online quite actively. He came out as one of people perceived him as an influencer actually on social media, just testifying, how active and how present he was on social media platforms. And in the end, as Martin said, being active on social media does pay off. But I would still emphasize what Martin said here. Yes, social media is here to stay. I think it's not just for political actors to be on social media. It's actually for everyone. It's valid for state institutions, not just in Moldova, but actually worldwide, to communicate to their citizens and to explain the government policies in languages and in formats which people are more likely to understand and to consume. So for civil society, for everyone, actually, social media has been an unavoidable platform platform. Even the traditional media has to adapt to these new formats. But still, for politics, I don't think we're yet in a stage where just social media follows. Of course, the face-to-face outreach is very important, and I would second here what Martin said. I've seen myself this morning posts from people running the PAS campaign, testifying to the extent or the really active efforts or the huge efforts being made to reach out almost every locality in Moldova with almost 7,000 activities, which I think is indeed impressive. So we might not be there yet, but we're definitely moving to a space. And I'm not just thinking about Moldova here, I'm looking at the wider European space, of course, with so many people or so many political forces becoming or surfacing or even sometimes leading, as we saw in the Romanian elections, just because they use the social media as a platform to campaign and to make their voice heard among people.
Thank you. At this point, let me just remind the audience you have the ability to post questions, comments, thoughts. Feel free to make use of it. There's a Q&A down below or post it directly in the chat. Of course, I'm happy to continue with my questions, but I would also like to bring in somebody else. If you want to participate, please feel free to do so. In the meantime, and a phenomenon that we have seen in other countries, not the least the US, but also more and more in Europe, is the rise of political podcasts as a digital format. Question to the both of you. Have you seen also that there have been new podcasts or important podcasts that have made some kind of impact on the election and the political system as a whole?
Podcast is the type of content which has surfaced in Moldovan space. Really, in the last years, we've seen lots of new podcasts flourishing, and of course, it was very much impacted by the monetization politics which were implemented in Moldova just very recently. So, of course, we saw a surge in local content creators on YouTube. Of course, we see different types of conversations happening on YouTube. Some of them lean more towards the interview format. Some of them are more in the classical podcast formats. Not many, I must say, there are not many products that label themselves as a political podcast. The most common format is just inviting people who are relevant people or known people in Moldova. Of course, ahead of elections, politicians are unavoidable or cannot be ignored as prevalent or kind of most known people or people I think we expect to see now or to be interviewed. So we did see a lot of politicians going to interviews, going to podcasts, using various platforms to communicate their positions. But of course, there are a couple of formats that have been active in the last 2 months specifically, discussing not just with politicians, but also with political analysts, with civil society about the impact of elections and so on. I must say that we did test specifically. Of course, it's somewhat of a different scope of study to see what type of content people view on TV, but I would say it very much applies also to online formats as well. So political conversations or political talk shows are not necessarily the most used or the most liked content for Moldova. At least it's not the content Moldovans expect to watch the most. When it comes to the type of programs or the type of contents Moldovans want to watch and watch the most, it's definitely entertainment. And I think it's very consistent, again, with people in Europe and worldwide as well. Ahead of elections, of course, the space gets very much, flooded with election-related topics and elections specifically. And indeed, we just opened a discussion mentioning how high stakes these elections were, how actively people followed the news and what was happening. So clearly, there was an appetite for this. But as I mentioned, it was not just politicians. We saw influencers, which are of course a separate category of voices, which are surging online and which are gaining a platform and lots of power, also speaking about the stakes of the elections, speaking about or voicing their position around the elections, encouraging people to go out and vote. We saw journalists, we saw civil society, analysts again. So it was really a lot of voices, not just politicians specifically.
Yeah, I think a principle that if we want to defend ourselves against disinformation, or if we want to inform in general, is the principle of abundance. We have to put a lot of material out there, and it has, many times, and the same message repeated many times. That's how it's going to be heard, and that's how you don't leave a vacuum for misinformation, or in a fair campaign, the message of your opponent. So you have to dominate the agenda by abundance. And I would also say that quantity leads to quality, because you do a lot of podcasts, you participate in a lot of things, you talk a lot, and all of a sudden you hit the mark, you hit the home run, and then you clipify it and you put it out there. So when I speak about this changed war narrative, I thought of a particular interview with a Russian journalist, analyst, that was very impactful, where, according to my Moldovan friend, spoke in a high St. Petersburg accent, and really explained how this war, what that war would look like. And he was also saying that Maya Sandu is good, but she's too nice, and she's not cracking down on all these people who are screwing around. So, and that's a message really for that kind of audience in the middle that are afraid, and they actually do listen to Russian media and so on. So I think that these still what people consume are not the 2 hours, it's a clip, and it's really about creating the best possible clips.
Thank you very much. We have a question from the audience on the prevalence of AI. We touched upon this earlier a bit, that there was some cases, but it wasn't that widespread, which I think is something that we've seen with other elections as well. That the anticipation of the use of AI sometimes has been actually bigger in the communication than it then happened. But the other question is, what kind of products are being used by political parties? So do you have insights into the tech stacks? Are the parties using US products? Are they using European products? Can you give us some insight on that, perhaps? Martin, Taisia, would you have?
I'm afraid, actually, we met with the digital teams of the more or less democratic parties. So we know that they don't have huge teams. They are not super sophisticated, as far as we know. So but we didn't get into discussing the weeds of it, or the different systems for it. Going back on the issue of AI. It's like asking people, did they use the internet these days? Because I think that when you create 12 different messages to say the same thing, every smart person today asks AI, can you help me develop 10 different slogans for the same picture, and using AI generated images for just for shareability and so on. So AI is already here every day in everything that we do. Not everybody's on the train, but I certainly am. And I think we've just seen the beginning of it. And in 4 years from now, we're not going to talk about AI, because it's going to be as natural as, oh, did people use computers? Yes, they did use computers. They did use AI.
Thank you. Yes, as Eric Wilson said, it's the last election cycle where we actually talk about the AI, because it's going to be embedded everywhere. So we just assume that it's in there. Taisia, do you have any insights on tech being used, tools being used within the political parties and the campaigns?
Yeah, I think that's, of course, the political parties would be better placed to speak about exactly what they used. And indeed, as Martin mentioned, we have had discussions with them, but the insides of the specific tools which they used were not really discussed by us with them, or we didn't go to asking them what their tools are. What I will say is that indeed the social media advertising, or the Meta ads library, the SEOs, the Google ads, all of that, it has been really actively used ahead of these elections. We've mentioned YouTube as a really second most used platform in Moldova. I don't think I've started a YouTube video in the last month which didn't start with some kind of political advertising, either not just by political parties, but also by civic campaigns encouraging people to go out and vote. I think it was really, really prevalent, or really made massive use of online ads, which we've seen in these campaigns. But this is something that, of course, it's not new to these elections. We've seen this at least in the last 10 years. I just think that indeed, with social media having more grounds and more weight in Moldovans' media consumption preferences, it's just, it's clear that we started with Martin's experience of spending budget for online. It's clear now that parties carve a much bigger budget for online than they did in elections before.
Thank you. And a follow-up question from Kangxi: was there also pro-climate change campaigning by the parties? How important was climate change, Martin, on the issue list? And if there was pro-climate change campaigning, was it successful?
It was in the pre-election research, both by us and others. This topic comes in as number 20, and there is one pro-European party that contains a Green Party that I saw them. They were trying to talk about climate change. They did so in their online campaigning, but they didn't get any traction, and it's not it's a dead issue in Moldova, unfortunately. But this is not. I think that in some ways it's implicit in joining the European Union, and it's, of course, global warming is a concern in Moldova, because that this is a country where the weather has actually changed a lot.
As in many countries, we are seeing a kind of a green backlash where climate is dropping down on the priority list compared to other issues, at least for the time being. So it sounds like that's also happening in Moldova. We're almost out of time. So just very quickly, as a last round, can I ask the two of you? So Moldova, as you said, has learned from Romania and has applied some of the lessons learned. What can other countries learn from Moldova now that the election is over? Aya, can I start with you?
Yes, I think that, and I got this message from so many of my friends, colleagues worldwide, basically saying that Moldova, and especially the Moldovans as a society, proved a really high level of resilience. And we've discussed this before this morning, the high stakes of these elections. I think a lesson that's at least one of the lessons for me is that it takes really a whole of society approach to defend the democracy of the country, basically. This year we saw an unprecedented mobilization, as I've said, beyond just political parties and campaigning, of civil society, of media. Investigative media specifically has been instrumental before the presidential elections into exposing illicit finances, specifically vote bribery schemes, which have in the end mobilized people to go out and vote both in country and abroad. And media has also been instrumental in these elections as well. So, but it's not just spam. It took, social media influencers. It took ordinary citizens to go out and speak more about the high stakes of these elections and about the importance of maintaining democracy. And this is, I think, a key thing Martin has mentioned before, of the importance of proactiveness in communication. And it really took a village to defend Moldova's democratic course in these elections.
Thank you. So a proactive whole society approach. Martin, what's your take?
I think when it comes to disinformation and attacks against the democratic system, I think that Moldova showed that you give actually resources to the security services. I mean, that's why we have security service, to protect our constitution and our country. So it's not for everybody to have to be concerned with this. Second, do not leave an information walkover. So you have to communicate in abundance, and that goes for the government for the full mandate period, to maintain trust in public institutions, and of course in election campaigns you have to be in the space. And the third one is now for campaign managers, is that do not forget about the door-to-door. The personal meeting is still the most important one, and this is also the one when you speak to regular people, they will give you the language that they want when you explain your political campaign. So you can take them word for word and then transmit it in your social media.
Brilliant. Well, thanks to you both. We are basically really on time. Thanks everyone for taking the time and spending this hour with us. I thought it was very, very informative and insightful. The video has been recorded, so we will provide it. There's also going to be an article on the Partisan website. And of course, if you want to learn all of this about TikTok, about YouTube, how to use it, we'll have all of them at the Political Tech Summit in Berlin in January 2026. 23rd to 24th of January, 2 days full of experts, speakers, companies, organizations, peers. So please do attend. There's still some early bird tickets available on the politicaltech.eu website. I hope to see you there. Thanks again, Taisia. Thanks again, Martin. It has been great. See you hopefully at the next webinar and at the Political Tech Summit. Have a good one.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.